How do you reach max rank in Dark and Darker? Whether you're a new player or a veteran, this guide is for you since it's actually a lot easier to hit Demigod rank than you might think. I hit Demigod rank within the first week of the season as a barbarian just by rinsing and repeating the strategies that I'm about to show you. But fair warning, if you are a new player, you should accumulate some gold in normals first to be able to afford kits and the 100 gold high roller fee. And while this guide is from a barbarian perspective, the general strategies will be helpful for you no matter what class you main. That being said, I advise you to avoid playing Wizard and Ranger for ranking up solo since there seems to be fewer demigods from those classes in solos than any other classes. Also be aware that this guide is for solos, though the general rank up strategies will be relevant no matter what team size you use. Lastly, be aware that your ranks in solos, duos, and trios are completely independent of each other, so specialize in just one of those when aiming for max rank. With that out of the way, let's talk about how ranks work. You'll start in Neophyte rank, then play high roller match after high roller match while earning as many rank up points as you can to hopefully reach Demigod. Ranking up changes your rank picture color and raises your position on the leaderboards, but more importantly, it unlocks rewards for you after the next wipe. In the past, Neophyte has awarded potions and bandages, while Apprentice rewarded 500 gold and Wanderer awarded a gold coin bag. Fun fact, these rewards are character specific, meaning you could have 9 characters and grind Wanderer rank on all of them to start the next wipe with 4,500 gold and 9 coin bags. As of the time of making this video, the current rank rewards haven't been revealed, but most likely the Neophyte through Wanderer rewards will be the same as before. Pathfinder and above have awarded account-wide skins, so you only need to hit those ranks on one character. Pathfinder rewarded the Nightmare Skeleton skin in Season 1 and the Frostwalker skin in Season 2, so most likely it will be a racial skin for this season as well. Voyager, Exemplar, and Demigod have awarded unique item skins like torch skins, campfire skins, cape skins, and potion skins. While the item skins are purely just skins, the racial skins actually slightly modify your stats, so I highly recommend at least hitting Pathfinder rank in case this season's ranked skin actually ends up being strong. I don't advise waiting for the current rewards to be revealed before caring about ranking up, because in Season 2, they revealed the ranked rewards about 2 weeks before the ranked season was over. With that explained, let's choose the best map. At first, you might think that Goblin Caves is the best map to rank up with since it has the lowest AP entry fees along with 2 bosses that were designed to be soloable. While that is true, bossing can be risky because even if you've mastered the bosses with a quick 100% kill rate, it's still very common that other players will try to ambush you while you're trapped in the treasure room. Some classes will fare better than others when trapped in a room, but it's still best to avoid being cornered. On top of that, Goblin Caves is the only map that doesn't have a lower level. The Ice Cavern has Ice Abyss and the Howling Crypts has Inferno, which reward you an extra 100 points just for going there, immediately offsetting the extra rank point cost of entering those dungeons instead. On top of that, starting those lower levels resets the timer, giving you more time to slay monsters, interact with objects, and collect better loot for even more points. So I'd stay away from Goblin Caves. Between Ice Cavern and Crypts, I personally like Crypts way more since the Ice Cavern monsters feel much more dangerous and tedious to clear. The more monsters you clear, the more rank points you'll get and the more you'll be able to loot. So I highly recommend choosing Crypts, and be sure to learn Inferno because you'll need to go there every time. Now that we're queuing for Crypts, what is our strategy? First off, if you have 2 monitors, Google Dark and Darker interactive map and select the Crypts on your other monitor. Look at your in-game minimap, then compare it to the website map to check the different variants until they match your own. There used to be 6 possible variants of the Crypts map, but now there's only 2, so it should be easy to figure out which one is yours. Not only will this help you see exactly where you are and where you can go, but it'll also show you all the extract locations so you can plan your exact route. You can even toggle specific enemies or objects to see their exact locations on your map, which is amazing for questing. But me personally, I just look for a good close red extract location and gradually clear my way there. If you didn't know, the red staircase icon on the minimap leads to a locked gate that unlocks when about 2.5 minutes are left. Then you can enter inside to enter a waiting room before restarting the timer in Inferno. Depending on your class, you don't usually want to rush a location because if you have a bunch of mobs behind you and a player shows up, they can use those mobs against you. So play it safe in the standard Crypts layer, that way you're never at a disadvantage with respect to other players. Once you get down to Inferno, you won't see other players nearly as much and the loot will be much better, so you can grab more treasure here to compensate for your cautious playstyle above. Before I continue, let me break down the ranked point system for you. They're called adventure points, or AP for short, and you earn more per match the better that you played. The more AP you earn, the faster you'll rank up, and at higher ranks, you'll have to pay an AP fee just to enter the dungeon, so if you don't earn more AP than the cost of entry, you'll gradually derank even if you didn't die. And if you do die, you automatically earn 0 AP for that match, but you still have to pay the AP cost of entry. So that means the most important thing is for you to survive. Even if you kill the boss and slaughter 5 players while filling your inventory with legendary loot, if you don't survive, survive the match, you get 0 points. So don't take risks, play it safe, and focus on survival. After survival, what else should you focus on? The adventure results summary can be overwhelming and confusing, but it really breaks down to 5 things: player kills, monster kills, prop interactions, loot, and dungeon down. As I explained before, we want to play it safe, so I would avoid fighting players when possible. Monsters are predictable and consistent, and you always know what to expect. But since there's no gear-based matchmaking in High Roller, you have no idea if a player you fight might be using artifact tier weapons. Unless a player pushes you or it's very advantageous to push a fight yourself, I'd avoid the risk and play it safe. The only exception to this is fighting rangers, because more often than not, if you don't pressure the ranger early, they'll probably set up a bunch of traps and dark spots, then shoot at you to bait you into the traps for a free kill. So often it's best to be aggressive with them early on so the fight is more on your terms. But again, that will depend on your class. It's also worth mentioning that points earned from defeating players is very inconsistent because it depends on your rank and the rank of the player you defeated. So when you're at higher ranks, you often won't earn much from player kills, making PvP even less reliable for AP earnings. The devs are planning on changing up the AP system in the future, which will probably encourage player kills more. But for now, PvP is not even close to being worth the risk unless you're more focused on making money by selling enemy gear instead of focusing on ranking up. Remember, it's not just about winning the fight, it's also about the risk of being finished off by another player, aka being third-partied after you're injured from winning the first fight. So with that out of the way, and the fact that Dungeon Down is a guaranteed plus 100 points since we'll be going down to Inferno every time, that just leaves monster kills, prop interactions, and loot. For monster kills, I'm including sub-boss kills and boss kills, though high roller bossing is pretty tough, especially for solos, since these bosses are balanced for trios. Whether it's Lich, Ghost King, or Skeleton Warlord, I highly recommend you don't try to battle the boss and instead focus on clearing rooms and looting treasure. But if you're in trios and are experienced with bossing, feel free to kill boss. Sub-boss kills like Wraith and Skeleton Champion are okay-ish, just make sure you have a nice cheese spot. The biggest concern is if a player finds you while you're trying to cheese a sub-boss and could seriously punish you for it, so I try to avoid sub-bosses except for that one Skeleton Champion corner room. Demon Berserkers and Centaurs are usually fine to fight if you know how to battle them, since you won't often see other players in Inferno. But of course, if you know a player is nearby, don't pull Zerker or Centaur. Since most of the monster kill points will come from regular monster kills, make sure you're quick and efficient with clearing skeletons, mummies, and bugs, since the crypts are full of them. If Pyramid Room is close to your path, I recommend heading there to wipe out the Death Skulls, since they only give slightly fewer points than skeleton kills, but you can kill so many so quickly. On top of that, the room is full of chests and even has a lever you can pull to enter the secret underchamber for a royal coffin and lion's head chest. As for Inferno, Berserkers strangely give more points than Centaurs, though both are worth killing if you can do so efficiently. Next up is prop interactions. Whenever you walk up to something in the dungeon and press F to interact with it, that's an interaction. This includes opening chests, interacting with shrines, mining ore, and opening portals. But be aware that interacts only award AP on the first interact. This means that only the first mining of an ore node, the first interact of a gold pile, and the first interact of a shrine, etc. will give you AP. Also, not all interacts are equal. Opening a golden chest can give at least triple the AP of opening smaller chests. By the way, the exact AP values of monsters, props, and treasures are all listed on the Dark and Darker wiki if you're curious. But what's funny is that classes who can destroy interactables get the same point benefit as classes who interact to open them. This means that Barbarian Crush, as well as Wizard Fireball and Explosion, will award the same AP for destroying chests. I assume that Warlock Hellfire and Druid Bear Right Click will do the same, but I haven't tested this, though be aware that smashing pots or boxes does not count as prop interactions. And lastly, we have loot. This is actually really simple. The better the quality of the loot, the more AP you'll earn from it. So for best to worst, it's uniques, golds, purples, blues, greens, whites, and grays. However, while armor and weapon loot will award AP just like treasures will, treasures are much better for making AP. For example, a green bowl is better than a blue helmet when it comes to AP gains. So ideally, you want to fill up your inventory with as many of the highest rarity treasures as possible, then fill the remaining space with gear loot as needed. What I usually do early on in the dungeon is only pick up purple plus armor and weapons while grabbing all green plus quality treasures or higher. If you pick up too much blue gear, you'll often find yourself dropping them later to make room for green treasure. Dropping items or trying to figure out how to rearrange loot to make space wastes time, and time is precious in ranked. Again, the specific number breakdowns are on the wiki, but a good rule of thumb is that treasure is +1 rarity more valuable for AP than gear loot is. Another good rule of thumb is that smaller pieces of treasure are more valuable than larger ones. So bangles, bands, emeralds, sapphires are more valuable per slot than larger treasures like crowns, bowls, and especially scrolls. But this detail is less significant, so you don't only really worry about this if you found so many treasures that you can drop bigger pieces for multiple smaller ones. Now that we know how to best earn rank up points and which map to play, let's talk about the build. Again, this is from a barbarian perspective since that's what I've played most and have demigod in, but there will be some takeaways no matter what class you play. Starting with perks, we'll take Crush to help break doors, chests, and player guards. Barbarian has the second lowest base regular interaction speed in the game, so it's extremely helpful to break down doors after running players try to slam them in your face. Also, while I haven't specifically tested this, since doors are interactables, it's possible that breaking them might lead to a small addition of prop interaction points. For chests, crushing them will give some interaction points while also quickly revealing their loot. Sometimes some nice goodies get covered up though, so keep open inventory space so you can quickly pick up the larger items to reveal the hidden shinies underneath. Since breaking chests gives some AP, it might be a good idea to smash chests that you don't even care to loot just to get a few extra points depending on what your options are. And finally, since we'll be using a Bardiche, which has an impact value of 5, adding Crush raises the impact value to 6, meaning that you can easily break any player guards aside from the tiny bucklers. Next up is Robust. This one is pretty simple, just 15% more health. Barbarian has terrible ranged options, so we have to be able to absorb more damage while we try to close the gap. And of course, this will also help us win our melee trades. Next up is Potion Chugger. If you've seen my beginner guide video, you might remember that I normally choose Savage here. Savage is a great perk, but we'll be wearing chest armor for High Roller, and Potion Chugger Sustain is honestly amazing. You get 20% more benefit from health potions in half the time. This means that a gray health potion that would normally heal 15 HP over 20 seconds now heals 18 HP over 10 seconds. This is a massive healing rate jump from 0.75 HP per second to 1.8 HP per second. Plus, they also heal unrecoverable health and are much quicker to consume instead of trying to use several bandages with the second lowest regular interaction speed in the game. And finally, we run Berserker. You can run something else instead if you really want to, but honestly, this perk has secured clutch kills for me when I really needed them. This, plus Crush and Robust, really helps us win 1v1s against other meleeers. Even though the perk is useless while we're at full HP clearing regular mobs, I still feel it's worth it for those emergency PvP moments. But if you'd rather use other perks, Iron Will might be tempting for more magic resistance and knockback immunity, but honestly, I don't think it's worth using. Wizards are rare, and while Warlocks are common, they usually stack true damage, which will bypass your magic resistance anyway. Having that Berserker buff so you damage them harder when you finally catch up will be more beneficial. We will be using double shout, so Treacherous Lungs might be tempting to extend our shout duration by 30%, but I still don't think it's worth dropping any of our other perks for. Now for the skills, we'll first take Rage. Even though it was nerfed recently, Rage is still very helpful because it temporarily boosts our movement speed by plus 30. Sure, we will be stacking movement speed on our gear anyway, which I will explain soon, but again, we have the worst ranged options in the game, so it's extremely important that we close the gap as fast as possible. Speaking of melee trades, we'll be running Savage Roar to make melee trades much more favorable. This skill was also nerfed recently, but even a minus 30% physical damage bonus penalty to nearby opponents is worth it to help you win your trades. Just make sure to pop it when you know the fight is actually happening. We don't want the player to bait this shout then run away, so you ultimately waste it. Also, it's not talked about often, but don't forget Savage Roar is also great at fearing monsters. It will interrupt whatever they were doing while either briefly holding them in place or making them run away. Just be aware that not all monsters are affected by the fear, and many creatures in Inferno, like the Berserker and Centaur, are actually immune. Now for skin choice, this isn't mandatory by any means, but if you already have the skin, choose the Elf skin because agility is overpowered, especially for our class where we need to close the gap. Sacrificing a strength point for it is okay since we deal more than enough damage already, we just need more movement speed to quickly reach enemy players. Plus remember that agility isn't just for movement speed. Sure, movement speed scales 75% with agility, meaning that every 4 added agility leads to 3 additional movement speed, but action speed, which is also an important stat for us, has 25% scaling with agility, meaning that every 4 points of agility leads to 1% action speed. And finally, regular interaction speed has 40% scaling with agility, but will generally be crushing interactables, so this shouldn't matter too much. Now for the gear, our weapon of choice will be the Bardiche. It has great range, insane damage, and its movement speed was buffed with the game's Steam release. It also has a great overhead stab 1-2 combo for excellent DPS. Just be aware that long swords are a rough counter, so learn to drag your swings and aim around their blocks. Make sure to get a nice rarity Bardiche like blue or purple in the marketplace and pick one that has max damage roll. For blue, the max damage roll is 64. For purple, the max damage roll is 68. Mine is 65 because I bought it before the recent buff. Depending on your budget, aiming for rolls like additional weapon damage, physical power, and physical damage bonus are great, but don't splurge too much if you're new and learning. Though I encourage you to check the market frequently and filter by modifiers for items you want, because it's not unusual for some players to underprice best in slot gear. For the secondary, we'll run Viking Sword and Lantern. To be clear, the Viking Viking Sword is terrible to fight with, even with this build, but it's an amazing weapon for chasing down players, especially in combination with our high movement speed and rage skill. Viking Swords are pretty cheap, so you should easily be able to buy a decent blue or purple one. And even if you don't want to buy a weapon damage, fist power, fist damage bonus lantern, at least buy a gray lantern to light your way while you chase so you can see hidden ranger traps. It also helps you see spider mummy pots and regular pots so you can smash them with a Viking Sword to stop spider spawns and claim lots of treasures. Now for armor, the modifiers will be much more important than the rarity. A couple extra points of armor and 1 extra point of an attribute aren't going to make a huge difference for us, but more movement speed, health, and action speed are very helpful. Every piece of armor that I used to hit Demigod was blue, except for my cape, which was purple, but the modifiers were extremely good. So keep in mind that we're focusing on movement speed, health, and action speed. For the helmet, we'll use a leather cap. It's very lightweight, yet boosts vigor, which raises our HP. If you didn't know, every point of vigor raises our health by 1.5. For the modifiers, mine is +2 dexterity and plus 0.9% action speed. Every point of dexterity is plus 0.75% action speed, so both these stats raise action speed. If I could choose whatever modifiers I wanted, I would take the max rolls of plus agility and health, but I bought this cap because I got lucky and found it for a low price. Unfortunately, leather caps with good modifiers tend to be kind of expensive on the player market, so alternatively, you can buy a Viking helm because they're dirt cheap. Yes, they're heavier, so they'll slow you down a bit more, but you'll get lots of agility from them to offset that a bit, plus you can get health and action speed modifiers for much cheaper. To be clear, agility modifiers aren't an option here, since the modifier can't be the same as the base stat of the helmet. Since the Viking helm boosts agility by itself, it can't also have an agility modifier with it. For our chest armor, we'll run a copper light tunic. Copper light armor is crafted gear with the unique quality of raising move speed by +3 per piece. Since the tunic only slows us down by 3, the copper light modifier makes this tunic weightless. The +5 max health is also great to increase our survivability, and the shirt gets 2 modifiers as a green instead of 1. Just be aware that since this is a crafted item, it's much harder to get the exact modifiers you want, making them much more expensive. Mine is +2 dex on it, along with a useless +2 magical power, but having even one somewhat useful modifier is already good enough for this piece of gear. You could also run a tripelt doublet, but those get very expensive. For the gloves, we'll use reinforced gloves. You could run Grave Wolf gloves, but they're pricey. And the dexterity gloves are split with will, which isn't very useful for us, so the next best choice is reinforced for more health. Mine is +3 max health and +2 dexterity. Remember how I said an armor piece can't have a modifier that boosts its same attribute? Well, the reinforced gloves do raise health, but they do it through vigor. Even though a max health modifier does basically the same thing, it's technically a different stat, so you can stack them together. For the pants, we'll use loose trousers. This is a no-brainer. Lightest pants, and they boost agility, so this is easily the best choice. But you could run Brave Hunter pants if you want to pay more. But even loose trousers with good modifiers are usually very expensive. I got lucky with mine having a +6 max health roll and +2% action speed roll. I managed to buy it for cheap from the player marketplace, so again, check the marketplace frequently and filter by desired modifiers. There are plenty of people who don't know the value of the items that they list. For the shoes, we'll of course take laced turn shoes. You might think to take Lightfoots instead since they give a bit more movement speed, but remember that agility not only boosts our movement speed, but also slightly boosts our action speed. Lightfoots are fine, but I definitely recommend laced turn shoe over Lightfoots. Also, boots are the only piece of equipment that you can get the additional movement speed modifier on, so try to get a max roll of additional movement speed if you can. Just be aware that those tend to be very expensive. I have laced turn shoes with +5 movement speed and +3 health. For the cape, of course, we run agility. I have another lucky purchase here, this time purple with +3 max health, +2% action speed, and a useless +1 true magical damage. You don't have to get a purple, I just bought this one because I found it for a super low price on the marketplace. For the rings, of course, they're rings of quickness for more agility with action, speed, and health modifiers. Grim Smells are fine, but they'll add a lot to the cost, especially with desirable modifiers. And finally, the amulet is of course a fox pendant for more agility while having health and action speed modifiers. With all of this combined, I end up with 319 base movement speed, about 198 health, and 14.2% action speed. The kit ultimately costed about 4k gold, but I also got lucky with some of these purchases. Try to aim for at least 310 movement speed, 180-ish health, and 10% action speed. And if you're confused about whether to choose vigor or max health, dexterity, or action speed, just remember that every point of vigor is plus 1.5 max health, and every point of dexterity is plus 0.75 action speed. So just browse the marketplace and look at the cost-effective options and choose what works the best for you. Now for consumables, since we're running Potion Chugger, you don't really need to bring bandages. They could still be helpful sometimes if you're really hurt, and bandaging in a safe corner while the potion healing ticks. But I got lazy and honestly just started only bringing health potions. They're not that expensive and you only need grays, so I'd usually bring about 12 stacks just to be safe. Of course, bring torches and bring some Francisca axes too. They're nice for applying ranged pressure while you try to close a gap to ultimately finish your opponent with melee. Just remember that when they hit a target, you can't get them back like arrows or bolts, so don't waste them on AI mobs. It would probably be smart to bring protection potions and magic protection potions, but honestly I got lazy and didn't bring them. I do pick up protection potions mid-dungeon that I find and use those, but it's probably better to bring a few from the get-go. I almost did lose this kit to a warlock one game, so a magic protection pot would have been nice there. Just be aware that potion chugger affects those too, so sure, we get 20% more protection, but they also only last half as long, so push in quickly. And of course, bring lockpicks. I usually bring 3 since they stack in 3s, and maybe open 1 lion's head or golden chest in upper crypts while saving the other 2 for Inferno. Those chests can have legendary treasures in them, so definitely bring lockpicks so you can earn more AP and gold. Alright, we're geared up, we know the strategy, and we know where we're going. Let's queue up for crypts. So again, we have the Dark and Darker interactive map open on the other monitor, and we've figured out what variant we're on. I look for which red extract is closest and try to avoid PvP hotspots like the dead center of the map. For crypts variant 1, I usually aim for the center altar module at the middle right, since there are lots of boxes there that you can smash for great loot. Sure, you won't get interaction AP from smashing boxes, but the treasures you find inside still make them worthwhile to smash. Plus there's a red gate nearby that I can enter whenever I like. I advise you to stay away from the cliffs module at the top left because it's very big, wide, and open, which favors ranged classes who will happily kite you all around the room. I also recommend you stay away from the central vault because there's a skeleton champion and a wraith there, and it's a hot spot for players. So if you pull either sub-boss, a player will likely take advantage and focus you down while you have a sub-boss chasing you. For Crypts variant 2, I love playing around the Dark Priests module at the middle right because it's relatively close quarters, which favors Barbarian, and there's usually a lion's head chest or golden chest in that area. Though my favorite loot room is the chapel module top middle, but it's more dangerous and open, and there's so many directions players can ambush you from. But if you happen to be in an empty lobby, go for chapel. There's so many boxes to smash, along with either a lion's head or golden chest nearby, and of course a red gate that'll open around 2:30. The broken bridge module bottom middle isn't great for Barbarians since it's big and wide open, but it's not as bad as variant 1's cliffs module. Still, I'd aim for either Dark Priests or chapel. Now that we're in the dungeons, let's talk about how to use the Bardiche and how to battle the various monsters you'll face. Thanks to our high action speed and movement speed, the Bardiche will feel much less clunky than it would in normal since we can move and swing faster. Even so, be aware that backpedaling leads to a 40% move speed penalty, so try to get in the habit of mostly moving forwards or sideways. While attacking, this means that you face forward to hit the head, then turn sideways while recovering to max your spacing move speed, only to quickly turn back for the poke, then repeat the side spacing again to follow up with the finisher. Also be aware when the active contact frames for your Bardiche take effect, because if your turning causes your Bardiche to hit a wall, ceiling, or floor, it will interrupt your combo. You'll especially notice this when trying to smash doors, so depending on how close you are to the door, I recommend you crouch and look down while swinging at the door. Worth mentioning, the Bardiche does have a block, but it's very rarely useful, generally just to emergency block a projectile, so I won't be talking about it much. And of course, unless you're trying to get around a player's guard, always aim for the head for 50% more damage regardless of what you're fighting. Now for the enemies. In High Roller, almost all the enemies will be either elite versions or nightmare versions of what you faced in normals. For skeletons, this means that they'll be either red or black. Red skeletons move faster, have more health, and hit harder. Nightmare skeletons move even faster than that, with even more health and damage, but they also each have a new combat quality that makes them even harder. The rule of thumb is to bait their attack then counter, but this will be harder for some enemies than others, so don't forget to crouch jump onto elevated surfaces to cheese when possible. Also, don't forget about your Savage Roar to fear enemies and interrupt their attacks. The Skeleton Footman is probably the easiest. They have a sword with no offhand. While you do outrange them, they are pretty fast, so you can probably hit them once, then turn and sidestep away from their counterattack before finishing them during their recovery. Just be aware that the Nightmare versions can do a broad swing, then follow up with an overhead slash, so if you see the broad swing, watch out for that follow-up. The Skeleton Guardsman is also pretty easy. Just aim over their shield to hit their head. If that's difficult, don't worry. Just bait their attacks so they lower their guard, then you can easily hit over their shield. That's especially helpful against the Nightmare versions because if you hit their lightning shield, you'll take some reflect damage. For the Skeleton Archer, you'll need to bait their shots before moving in to strike. They'll shoot either 1 or 2 times, and it's hard to know which is coming, so I stay a few feet away, then dodge their first shot and click to initiate my swing. If that first shot was their only shot, I'll move forward to confirm my hit and follow up for the kill before they fire again. But if they end up aiming a second shot, I'll just sidestep it while swinging through the air, then move in with my follow-up attacks for the kill. Just be aware that the Nightmare Archers can shoot 3 arrows, so watch out for that third potential shot. Don't forget, you can use Savage Roar to force an opening if you're really struggling to get in and strike. For the Skeleton Crossbowmen, all versions are pretty much the same, just that the Nightmare one hits harder, reloads faster, and has more health. But ultimately, just sidestep the shot, then close the gap and quickly kill them before they reload. Be aware that if you Savage Roar them, they instantly reload for some reason, so right after the fear is over, if they're not dead, they'll immediately shoot at you. Now for the Skeleton Swordsmen. These wield a big Zweihander that they swing from side to side. If they swing from your right to your left, it will be only one swing. But if they swing from your left to your right, they'll follow up with an additional right to left swing. You can't jump over these swings, but you can crouch under them. However, this has been inconsistent for me, so I prefer to just take advantage of my movement speed and Bardiche range to hit them, then sidestep to space it out. Just be aware that the Nightmare versions add a quick additional swing to their combos that slides along the ground, so you'll have to crouch jump over that last swing. Next is the Skeleton Axeman. Most of the time they'll attack with an overhead charge, so just sidestep it while double headshotting them for a clean kill. They can also do a broad swing, which I've sometimes been able to crouch to their right and look down to avoid, but this hasn't been consistent. The Nightmare Axemen are probably the scariest monsters. I only died twice in High Roller this season. One was to a Ranger Trap and the other was to a Nightmare Axeman. There's no shame in trying to find a cheese spot or using your Savage Roar just for them. They suck. Not only do they hit insanely hard, but they can follow up their overhead chop with the broad swing. The sidestep and crouch look down strategy can technically avoid their combo, but I wouldn't risk it. Skeleton Mages might seem scary, but they're actually pretty simple. Just bait their fireball attack and sidestep it, then move in and attack. If they bubble shield themselves, just back up and wait it out, then bait out another attack and close in for the kill. Be aware that they can also shield other enemies, which can be annoying sometimes if you were banking on that kill in that moment. I don't think the Nightmare version has any unique features, just more health and damage. Death Skulls might be one-tappable by your Bardiche depending on your loadout, so unless you get overwhelmed, you can probably one-shot them before they charge. If not, just bait their charge and sidestep, then swing during their recovery time. However, you most likely won't one-tap the Black Nightmare Death Skull, so let them charge first, then sidestep it before sidestepping again to dodge their second charge. Spider Mummies are pretty simple. They're really annoying because they swarm you and spawn non-stop. So first, find the spider pot and smash it so they'll stop spawning, then finish off what's left. The Nightmare versions also apply a slow when they hit you, and their pot is harder to smash, so be careful. Mummies are pretty simple, but they take a lot of hits. Just patiently space their attacks and counterattack until they're dead. Don't underestimate the Nightmare versions. They have more of a reddish glow and attack way faster. Plus, if they hit you, it will completely immobilize you, which could quickly finish you off. If you do get hit, immediately Savage Roar to get them off of you so you can recover. Otherwise, just carefully space yourself and counterattack until they are defeated. Zombies are pretty much the same, except they'll stop to release a gas cloud if they get close enough to you. Proper spacing, along with sidestepping while comboing, should ensure they never get close enough, but if they do charge up their gas, you can interrupt it with Savage Roar to prevent the gas release. Or you could just let them gas anyway. It's honestly not that bad as long as you avoid the gas. The Nightmare version spit out 2 gas clouds instead of 1, but it's honestly still not that bad, and you can handle those zombies the same way. The giant dragonflies are honestly more annoying rather than dangerous. They spit out poison in a spread, which is tough to weave between, but you can bait their spit, then charge in to hopefully one-tap them. Just remember to aim for the head. I know it sounds super dumb, but they have different hit zones like any other mob, so aim for the bug's head to maximize the chance of a one-tap. The Nightmare versions just spit more and do a bit more damage, but they're not that big of a deal. Just handle them the same way. As I explained before, you really shouldn't be challenging Skeleton Champ or Wraith, but if you happen to pull one, find a cheese spot. Crouch jump onto some kind of elevation or railing, then swing down at them while jumping over their attacks until they are dead. Okay, so you've defeated lots of enemies, smashed lots of chests, boxes and pots, prioritize looting good rarity treasure, but maybe have some purple gear too. You tried to avoid player fights, but you won the few that you had to take. Good job. If you're not ready, or you're hurt and or low on heals, then open a blue portal or enter a blue gate to immediately extract. But otherwise, you should take the red extract, then press G to sit down to recover HP if you need to. There's nothing to do in that room except wait. If there are other players still in the upper layer, the match timer will keep ticking until every other player has either extracted or also entered Inferno. Then you'll enter a loading screen before reaching Inferno. As always, the first step is to go to your Dark and Darker interactive map and see which of the 2 variants you got. The goal here is to plan your extraction room and work your way there. Again, no matter how good your match went, you'll get 0 points if you die. Survival is the highest priority. No matter which variation you got, the extracts are always in the 4 corner modules in this 3x3 module matrix. The middle room is always the boss, and we're going to try to avoid that unless we really need to run through. For variation 1, Demon Den on the bottom right is the easiest module since you have lots of space to work with and the extracts are at the bottom of the room while most of the enemies are at the top. Demon Lairs at the top right doesn't give as much space, and you have to get past skeleton archers and crossbowmen at higher elevations to reach the extracts, so it's dangerous for a non-ranged class like Barbarian. Blood platforms at the top left is scary because it has a Wraith, Berserker, lots of Nightmare skeletons, and not a lot of space. Blood columns bottom left is nice if you know how to fight Demon Berserkers, but you can also trap the Demon Berserker in the Ritual Rooms module above it if you'd rather not battle it. So generally you'll want to aim for either bottom right or bottom left. For variation 2, the bottom left Spider module is by far the easiest and safest module, but the bottom right Blood Prison module is great too. The top left Demon Mouth module is miserable. Do not go there because there are 3 demon bats that can easily ruin your game. Unfortunately, 2 of the possible Inferno player spawns are in that module, and I've almost lost great high roller matches just because I spawned in there. So unless you spawn in there and were forced to clear the bats, I highly recommend you avoid the top left Demon Mouth module. Blood River at the top right is fine if you know how to fight Centaur. Yes, you will also have to fight demon bats here, but at least you have much more space to fight fight them. Still scary, but much more manageable. Now for the enemies. Be aware that in High Roller Inferno, almost all the enemies will be Nightmare versions, but occasionally you'll see Red Elite versions and very rarely White Normal versions. For Demon Dogs, they'll be resting on the ground, but you can notice them from their bright red eyes. If you need to aggro one at a distance, throw a torch at it to get its attention. After that, just sidestep their charges and counterattack. It's that simple. They hit extremely hard, so do not try to trade with them. Most here will be the Nightmare variants with electrified collars, so avoid hitting that or you'll take some reflect damage. Demon Bats are honestly the most dangerous enemies in the dungeon. Sure, the red ones aren't that bad, but the black Nightmare versions are horrific. And in High Roller, that's almost always the version you're getting down here. As always, battle these difficult mobs one at a time, but make extra sure that you're battling the Demon Bat by itself. Switch to your Viking Sword for this because you need all the movement speed you can get. Also make sure you have plenty of space to circle around this demon during the fight. Do not initiate with Savage Roar because you might need it later. Let the demon attack first, then sidestep the attack while also moving around them. You're basically circling them to the side, and only swing while they recover from their attack. You're slowed while you're swinging, and you don't want to get slowed down while they're attacking, otherwise you'll likely get hit. But if you do get hit, you'll take lots of damage and be knocked back and slowed. Because of that slow, you're guaranteed to get hit again and again, so definitely pop Savage Roar if this happens, then put your weapon away and run. If you can close the door to block the bat for you to heal, do that. Take your time and get a full reset. This is not an enemy to be underestimated. At least wait until Savage Roar is off cooldown again before you re-engage so you can force the bat off of you once more if something goes wrong. Since you're using the Viking Sword and might not be able to reach the bat's head during the circling, you probably won't do that much damage, so expect the fight to be lengthy, but this is the safest way to kill it. You might think the Centaur is really dangerous from their looks, but they're actually one of the easiest mobs in the dungeon. As before, make sure to pull it by itself and make sure you have plenty of space. Then just stand in front of the Centaur and continuously attack. If he swings overhead, crouch and look down while moving to the left. If he follows with a broad swing or initiates with one, just crouch and look down while moving right. Then just rinse and repeat till he's dead. It's that easy. Demon Berserker is tougher, but still not that bad. Though again, pull it alone and have lots of space. If you have a cheese spot, that's the fastest and safest way to kill it. But if not, circle the Berserker to your right, its left, effectively rotating around it counterclockwise while continuously attacking. Meanwhile, if the Berserker swings from your left to your right, crouch jump over the swing while still circling them and attacking. If they swing from your right to your left, crouch and look down under the swing while still circling and attacking. If the Berserker finishes with a spin attack, just crouch and look down. Rinse and repeat until the Berserker is dead. I think that for Crypts, Death Beetles are only in the upper part of Inferno Variation 1's bottom right Demon Den module, so you might not even ever see them. But if you do, don't worry. All you have to do is sidestep their spit, then counterattack to defeat them. I'm not going to explain the bosses in this video. You really shouldn't be fighting the High Roller bosses as a solo since they're balanced for trios. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's going to be difficult and take a while, and your time is probably better spent clearing the standard rooms, looting chests, and securing extracts. Speaking of which, once you've cleared your extract room and secured it, if you're new, you probably took a lot of time to clear it and had to heal up a lot, so you need to extract right away. That's okay. This is a learning experience and practice makes perfect. Over time, you'll clear rooms faster while taking less damage, so you can even loot additional rooms and clear more enemies for faster rank ups. Now that you've survived the dungeons, vendor your treasures, marketplace check the gear you bring back to see what's worth listing on the market versus what you should just vendor right away. Don't forget to pay attention to modifiers on the gear you're checking because good modifiers can spike the value of gear. Improve your existing gear by checking the marketplace often and keeping an eye out for good deals. And of course, keep gold saved up in case you die and need to buy a replacement loadout. Rinse and repeat, and eventually you'll hit Demigod. In my best run, I managed to get 2500 AP before the entry fee deductions. So getting Demigod is very achievable if you do what I did. However, that could change in the future with the new system the devs are planning since they said that players were advancing more quickly than they intended. So I expect Demigod rank to be harder to achieve in the future. For that reason, I highly recommend you secure Demigod while you can, especially since there's no decay system, at least there hasn't been yet. I got Demigod on my first week of ranked and haven't played a single High Roller match since then on my main. I've just been questing and playing normals matches with friends, which is much more refreshing than the sweaty High Roller grind. Either way, best of luck in your matches. If you have any questions, please comment them below and I'm happy to help. Please like and subscribe if you found this video helpful since it took a long time to put together. Happy adventuring.